At 63, Margaret thought she knew everything about loneliness. Widowed for 7 years, the British art curator had built walls so high that even her closest friends couldn't scale them. Then Amara walked into her gallery, a stunning 67-year-old Nigerian sculptor with silver locks, warm brown skin that seemed to glow from within, and a laugh that made Margaret's carefully constructed world tremble. What began as an innocent friendship over shared cups of Earl Grey and passionate discussions about art slowly transformed into something neither woman expected. But when you've lived 6 decades guarding your heart, can you really learn to love again? And what happens when that love comes from a place and a person you never imagined? Zemira had built her life like the diplomatic treaties she negotiated, carefully, methodically, with no room for chaos. Her Zurich penthouse reflected this, all clean lines, African contemporary art, and a wine collection that whispered of tasteful restraint. At 58, she'd become exactly what her younger self had planned, a senior UN cultural envoy, respected, composed, untouchable. The invitation to the Geneva Winter Gala had seemed routine. Another evening of champagne diplomacy. Another black tie performance of her perfectly curated life. She'd chosen her burgundy Duro Olowu gown with its architectural shoulders specifically because it made her feel invincible. She hadn't counted on Thessaly. The name on the guest list had meant nothing, Voclain Gallery, Paris. But then she'd turned, and there was that face. Older, yes. The honey-colored skin now mapped with laugh lines, the once wild curls now a sophisticated silver bob. But those eyes, God, those eyes were still molten silver, still capable of seeing straight through her. Dr. Okafor. Thessaly's voice was smoke and cognac. Or do you still prefer Z when you're pretending not to be terrified? French accented English, that slight Caribbean lilt that used to drive Zemira mad. The room was watching them. Geneva society loved its theater, but Thessaly had never cared about audiences. Ms. Voclain, Zemira's diplomatic training held, barely. I didn't realize you'd expanded to Switzerland. I expand to wherever beauty lives. Thessaly's smile was all edges. Though I'm surprised to find you here. Last I heard you were in Nairobi, building your empire of cultural preservation. The words carried weight. History. Because Thessaly knew, had always known, that Zemira's dedication to protecting cultural heritage was born the night she'd chosen duty over desire, preservation over passion. 27 years ago in Lagos, they'd been fire and air. Zemira, 31, a rising star in Nigeria's foreign service. Thessaly, 35, a maverick art dealer who'd shown up to acquire pieces for a Parisian collector and had instead acquired Zemira's heart. 6 months of stolen moments, clandestine meetings, a love that burned so bright it threatened to consume everything Zemira had worked for. Her family, her career, her carefully planned future. So she'd ended it, brutally, efficiently, the way she did everything. Now here stood the consequence of that choice, draped in winter white balmain, looking like she'd stepped out of a dream Zemira had spent decades trying to forget. I'm in Geneva for the Cultural Heritage Summit, Zemira said, her voice steadier than she felt. 3 weeks. How unfortunate. Thessaly accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter. I'm here for 6. The air between them crystallized, sharp and fragile as the snow falling outside the gallery windows. They couldn't avoid each other. Geneva's elite circles were small, and both women moved through them like sharks, sleek, powerful, impossible to miss. The second encounter happened at a private viewing at the Musée d'Art et d'Histoire. Zemira arrived late, her schedule packed with meetings about repatriating looted artifacts. She'd been arguing with a British museum director all afternoon. and wanted nothing more than quiet contemplation before a hodler painting. Instead, she found Thessaly. The gallery was dimmed, spotlit paintings glowing like jewels. Thessaly stood before a massive canvas, Klimt's The Bride, wearing emerald silk that should have clashed with the gold painting but somehow didn't. She looked like money and sin and everything Zemira had given up. "You're following me," Zemira said, announcing her presence. "Don't flatter yourself, darling." Thessaly didn't turn. "I'm consulting for the museum. They're considering a major acquisition. Some of us work for a living." As opposed to? As opposed to government salaries and noble causes. Now Thessaly did turn, and her smile was wicked. "Though I suppose saving the world's cultural heritage is very—" She paused, eyes traveling deliberately down Zemira's navy Stella McCartney suit. "Virtuous of you." Zemira's throat went dry. "Some of us believe in something beyond profit." "Oh, Z." Thessaly moved closer, her perfume, something dark and woody, probably custom blended in grass, filling the space between them. "You always did mistake passion for frivolity. Tell me, how's that worked out? All these years of noble sacrifice. Are you happy?" The question was a knife between ribs. "I'm fulfilled," Zemira said. "I didn't ask if you were fulfilled. I asked if you were happy." Before Zemira could respond, a museum director appeared, delighted to find them both. Introductions were made. They were invited to dinner, an intimate gathering, just 6 people, at Le Chat Beauté tomorrow night. Both accepted with gracious smiles, playing their roles perfectly. When they were alone again, Thessaly leaned in, her lips nearly brushing Zemira's ear. "Wear something that shows your shoulders. I always loved your shoulders." Then she was gone, leaving Zemira standing before Klimt's ecstatic bride, her carefully controlled heart hammering like it had learned to beat again. That night, Zemira stood at her penthouse windows, watching snow fall over Lake Geneva. She poured scotch, Glenfiddich 30, because she was spiraling, and let herself remember. Lagos, the hotel room with ceiling fans and sheer curtains. Thessaly's hands, her mouth. The way she'd laughed when Zemira tried to maintain dignity while coming apart completely. The plans they'd whispered in the dark. Zemira would take a sabbatical. Thessaly would open a gallery in Abuja. They'd build something together. Then morning came, and Zemira's mother called about an arranged marriage prospect, and duty crushed desire like an insect. She'd never married that prospect, never married anyone, built her career instead, told herself it was enough. Now Thessaly was back, and nothing felt like enough anymore. The dinner at Le Chat Beauté was torture disguised as haute cuisine. Zemira wore midnight blue lanvin, off-shoulder, as commanded, and arrived determined to be professional. She lasted approximately 40 seconds. Thessaly was already there, holding court in dove-gray cashmere, her laughter filling the private dining room like champagne bubbles. She was telling a story about acquiring a Basquiat from a Hong Kong collector who kept pet tigers, and everyone was entranced. When Zemira entered, Thessaly's gaze snagged on her bare shoulders. For one heartbeat, the mask slipped. Raw hunger flashed across her face before she controlled it, smiled that dangerous smile, and returned to her story. Dinner was exquisite, Saint-Pierre with caviar, duck breast with fig reduction, a dessert that involved chocolate and passion fruit in ways that felt obscene. The wine flowed Chateau Margaux because the museum director was showing off, and conversation ranged from art theft to climate change to a debate about whether Beyoncé qualified as a cultural heritage site. "Obviously, yes," Thessaly argued, gesturing with her wine glass. "She's redefined visual storytelling, reclaimed narrative power, created a visual language that—" "She's 43 years old," interrupted a Swiss banker. "Cultural heritage requires temporal distance." "Says who?" Thessaly's eyes flashed. "The same institutions that refused to recognize jazz as art, that dismissed Basquiat as graffiti, Heritage isn't about age, it's about impact. Zemira found herself nodding. Thessaly's right. We're too obsessed with antiquity. Cultural preservation should include protecting living traditions, contemporary movements. Otherwise, we're just tomb raiders with better PR. Their eyes met across the table. For a moment, they were allies again. Partners. The way they used to plan gallery exhibitions in bed, Thessaly's vision meeting Zemira's academic rigor. After dinner, the group moved to the hotel bar. More wine, more conversation. People gradually departed, early meetings, jet lag, the usual excuses, until it was just them. "Walk with me," Thessaly said. Not a question. Outside, Geneva was a snow globe. The lake was black glass, the jet dough frozen for winter, the old city glowing amber against the night. They walked without speaking, their breath forming clouds, their footsteps crunching in fresh powder. "Why did you really come to Geneva?" Zemira finally asked. "I told you, the museum." "Thessaly, please." They stopped on a bridge, the Rhone rushing dark beneath them. Thessaly's face was unreadable, snowflakes catching in her silver hair like diamonds. "I've spent 27 years being successful," she said quietly. 3 galleries. Paris, New York, Lagos. Yes, Lagos. I opened there 10 years ago, did exactly what we planned, except you weren't there. She turned to Zemira. "I've had lovers, relationships, even lived with someone for 5 years, and every single one of them was missing something." "What?" "You." The word hung in the frozen air. "I saw your name on the summit roster 3 months ago," Thessaly continued. "I called in favors, arranged the consulting gig, cleared my calendar because I needed to know." "Know what?" "If I was still in love with you, or if I'd just been in love with who we were." Zemira's heart was thunder. "And?" Thessaly stepped closer. "The moment you walked into that gallery, I wanted to destroy that ridiculous burgundy dress and make you remember what we were, what we could have been." Her hand lifted, hovering near Zemira's face. "So yes, still in love, furiously, inconveniently, pathetically." "Thessaly, but I'm 62 years old, Z. I'm not waiting another 27 years. So tell me now, was I just your wild moment, your youthful indiscretion, or was I something real that you've spent 3 decades running from?" The snow fell harder. The city held its breath. And Zemira, for the first time in 27 years, stopped running. She kissed her. Thessaly's apartment was in Saint Jean, all exposed brick and modern art and windows overlooking the old city. They barely made it through the door before they were tearing at each other's clothes with 27 years of hunger. "God, I've missed you," Thessaly gasped against Zemira's neck, her hands everywhere, relearning terrain that had changed and somehow stayed exactly the same. They made it to the bedroom eventually, fell into Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost more than Zemira's first car. And then there was just skin and breath and the particular geometry of 2 women who knew exactly how to destroy each other. Afterward, tangled together, watching snow fall past floor-to-ceiling windows, Zemira felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Peace. "I was terrified," she said quietly. "In Lagos. Of what loving you meant. My family would have disowned me. The foreign service in Nigeria then. It wasn't like now. I would have lost everything. You lost me instead." "I know." Zemira's throat ached. "And I've regretted it every single day since." Thessaly propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at her. At 58, Zemira was still stunning. High cheekbones, skin like polished mahogany, gray threading through her hair in a way that made her look distinguished rather than old. "What changed?" Thessaly asked. Why kiss me now? Because I'm 58 years old and I'm tired of being diplomatic with my own heart. Because 3 of my colleagues have died in the last 5 years, heart attacks, cancer, and it made me realize that nobility is a poor substitute for joy. Because, her voice cracked, because I love you. I've always loved you, and I've wasted enough time. Thessaly's eyes were wet. I'm not easy, Z. I'm demanding and opinionated, and I hate compromising. I negotiate peace treaties for a living. I think I can handle you. I'll want you to visit my galleries, meet my friends, be public. I'm already public. I'm a UN envoy, not a spy. And Nigeria has legalized same-sex relationships in major cities. The world has changed. Have you? Zemira pulled her down, kissed her slowly, thoroughly. I've changed enough to know that I don't want to die having never felt this again. That's a start. They spent the weekend in bed, leaving only for food delivered by Thessaly's favorite restaurants. They talked about everything: the years between, the lovers that hadn't worked, the careers they'd built in each other's absence. Zemira learned about Thessaly's gallery empire, her reputation as a fierce negotiator who'd made collectors weep. Thessaly learned about Zemira's work, returning stolen artifacts, her face on magazine covers, her TED Talk on cultural repatriation. You're famous, Thessaly said, scrolling through Google on her phone. When did you become famous? I'm not famous, I'm just visible. You have a Wikipedia page. You're famous. Sunday evening, reality intruded. Zemira had meetings. Thessaly had a client dinner. They dressed slowly, reluctantly, watching each other in mirrors. Come to Paris, Thessaly said. After your summit, I want to show you my gallery, take you to my favorite restaurants, introduce you to my life. I have 2 weeks before I'm due in Dakar for another conference. Perfect. Spend them with me. Zemira turned, adjusting her collar. What are we doing, Thess? What we should have done 27 years ago. Thessaly crossed to her, straightened her lapel with the ease of intimacy. We're choosing each other. 3 months later, Zemira stood in Thessaly's Lagos gallery, the one they'd dreamed of together decades ago. The opening was packed with Nigeria's cultural elite, the walls covered with contemporary African artists Thessaly had discovered and championed. Zemira wore custom Ike Ude, her arm linked through Thessaly's as they moved through the crowd. Thessaly was introducing her to everyone, no hesitation. This is Dr. Zemira Okafor, my partner, not my colleague, not my friend, my partner. At 58 and 62, they'd finally stopped running from what they were. The road ahead was complicated. Zemira's work meant constant travel, Thessaly's galleries demanded attention, but they'd learned that love wasn't about perfect timing. It was about choosing each other, again and again, in every moment that mattered. As the party swirled around them, Thessaly leaned close, her lips brushing Zemira's ear. Ready to go home? And for the first time in 27 years, Zemira knew exactly where home was. Have you ever let the perfect love slip away? Sometimes the universe gives you a second chance. Don't waste it. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose love over fear, passion over duty, and living over merely existing.